Hello and welcome to the big picture. The withdrawal of the Chinese troops after a 3-week standoff between India and China following their incursion into Depsang Valley in Ladakh has averted a major confrontation. During these 3 weeks, the perceived initial soft stand of the Indian government, accompanied by a frenzied media reaction, had escalated the tensions. The government of India's hardening of the stand later and not so subtle threat to cancel the visit of Foreign Minister Salman Khurshid to China later this week finally seemed to have worked. The standoff also threatened the visit of Chinese Premier Li Keqiang to India later this month, which also seemed to have persuaded the Chinese to withdraw their troops. Many questions, however, remain about the standoff, which beg for answers. The role of media in sensationalizing the incident and escalating the tensions is certainly one of them. Meanwhile, we will look at whether Chinese withdrawal of forces is a triumph of diplomacy, even as we discuss the entire issue today and try to find answers to the questions which remain unanswered. I have with me today an experienced panel of guests: Leela Ponappa, a distinguished retired diplomat and former Deputy National Security Advisor; Dr. Srikanth Kondapalli, Professor of Chinese Studies in the JNU; Kapil, retired Air Vice Marshal and a defense analyst; Ajai Shukla, Strategic Affairs Editor, Business Standard; and on the phone line from Beijing is Dr. Binod Singh, Assistant Professor at the Center for South Asian Studies in the Peking University. Welcome to all of you. Ms. Leela Ponappa, first I would like to come to you. This standoff had taken quite a, the media space, and also there was a lot of discussion on this. But this withdrawal is a good sign. Do you think, why do you think Chinese withdrew the troops? Yes. Okay, I think she's getting wired. The same question to you, Dr. Kondapalli.
It's not clear why the Chinese have announced the withdrawal yesterday, but I think there are some speculations. Since all this information is not declassified, there's no way one can actually find out. But I think there are 2-3 reasons why the Chinese have withdrawn. At the strategic level, at the larger level, if you look at the, for example, as you mentioned, Foreign Minister had suggested that the visit could be postponed.
Yes.
From May 9th till the other, which means that it will have a cascading effect on Li Keqiang's visit as well. Yeah. So that's probably one reason. A second reason could be that if you remember, in the last few days, Deputy Prime Minister of Japan is in town, where he said, he alluded to we were in the same boat argument. And you have also seen that Dr. Manmohan Singh is making an extended visit to Tokyo by one more day. And he said that he would look into the he would contact different political parties and so on and so forth. So the Japan factor
made the Chinese a little nervous?
Because it would have opened up different theaters for China. One on the eastern seaboard, another on the Ladakh sector, which is quite unmanageable for any country.
Right.
If the United States could not do one on Iraq, one on North Korea, how can the Chinese do on Japan and India? So it's kind of extending the theater. Third, I think, is, if you remember, in the last few days, there was some movement for boycott of Chinese goods.
Yes.
And which is, I think, is a significant thing. Although in globalization period, you cannot simply boycott goods from the other country, but there are implications.
Just the talk of it can be
quite unnerving to anybody, because China has something like $30 to $40 billion of
trade,
manufactured goods entry into India.
Yes.
And cumulatively over 100, if you look at the smuggling and a host of other, so which means it could quite pinch the Chinese commercial lobby in terms of boycott of Chinese goods. So this could be one reason why there could have been a change of heart in the Chinese case.
I think those are very interesting explanations you have given. Ms. Leela Ponappa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Dr. Kondapalli has given very interesting reasons why they could have withdrawn. But my basic question is, why did this incursion took place at all? Was it some kind of a localized incident as our government was trying to make out in the initial stage? Or do you think the Beijing was involved and there was a larger angle to this? Leela, Ponappa, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. I think Ajai, did you hear what I asked? You can come in with that, with an answer for that.
I can hear you, Girish.
Yes.
I partly agree with Srikanth, but I also look at it in a slightly different way. For me, China knew all along that there was the Salman Khurshid visit. China knew all along that Li Keqiang would be coming to India. China knew all along what our trade figures and what our trade stakes are. I think China very deliberately engineered this incident, knowing all of this, because it wanted to make a certain localized point at the point of incursion. China has certain claims in Daulat Beg Oldi. India has been raising the profile of that sector. It has activated an airfield at Daulat Beg Oldi. And China wants to convey a point that we are in a position, we have a veto on what is going on the border, because it's a disputed border.
Right.
In addition, there were certain Indian defenses at a place called Chumar, which China was objecting to. And it also gels with China's largest philosophy of keeping India off balance on the line of control. So all of this actually came together. China knew it would come in. China knew when it would withdraw. And for me, it was a fairly well-planned visit. India has made a certain number of points during this visit. China has made a certain number of points, and the visit has now during this incursion. And I think it has played out largely to the satisfaction of both sides.
Okay, that's interesting. Leela, Ponappa, can you hear me? Okay, I think we will get back to you later. Kapil Kak, you think this was a well-planned strategy, as Ajay thinks?
No,
or what is the larger? What is the how did they benefit from this?
I agree by and large with what Ajay is saying, but it's very intriguing. Srikanth will bear me out. You see, in strategic culture of China, they will do nothing without two distinct things. One is deception, and the second is what's called contextualization, which means every little move on the chessboard will be worked out before this is done. The intriguing question is, if despite what the larger India like China bilateral is, trade figures being what they are, construction companies are all over, they are much more present here than anywhere else in the world.
Absolutely.
The communication, telecom companies are having a field day here. Despite that, you're not allowing India, pharma and IT to get access in China. That's one side of the story. The second side of the story is that I think it was a strategic coercion to compel India to go back on the defense modernization that is taking place in the infrastructure sector in Ladakh after a belated long period. So how this could gel, I can't understand, because at the end of the day, who has won? China has not achieved any of its purposes. In fact, the intriguing question which we'll have to ask the government is as to where has government of India made some concessions, because to me it seems unlikely that the Chinese would withdraw without concession. So if we haven't made concessions, obviously China's strategic culture and its larger policy without vis-a-vis India has come on its head.
It's come on its head, and
achieved nothing.
It is a major embarrassment for them.
Absolutely.
Okay,
this is not quite unlike Girish. All their attempts, 67 in Nathula, in 1986 in Wangdong, thereafter in 2008 in the Finger sector in Sikkim, thereafter 2011 in Chumar area, 2012, once again, each time they have made these sort of, displays of power, localized power and coercion, and each time they have been deterred by our capabilities.
Absolutely. Let me get Dr. Binod Singh. Dr. Binod Singh is in Beijing. He's an assistant professor in Peking University. Binod, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you for having me from Beijing.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Binod, there is this, you heard all my guests here. There is, as Kapil Kak says, it's quite intriguing why China did this and why has it withdrawn. What is the sense you get sitting there in Beijing? Why do you think China went into this experiment? If it has withdrawn without any concessions being given by India, it can be called a misadventure.
I think we should not celebrate Chinese withdrawal at the moment. It's too early. For me, in the long Chinese history, Chinese are used to take these adventures or misadventures time and again. Even 1962 war, for the Chinese scholars or studies, they think it was just an adventure on Chinese behalf to teach India our lesson. And they are doing this with all of its neighbors, and they enjoy it sometimes. They do it for fun, first of all, and sometimes they do it, strategically motivated. So this time, I think they did it on a very wrong time. And nobody expected them to withdraw on such an early time. So now, why did they withdraw? We can explain in different way. But since the Chinese military is not a very transparent organization, and they don't take their call from civilian government as we in India. So I think we should wait, and it will come out only after some time. And I don't think Chinese had only plan A. They may have plan B, plan C. So instead of celebrating, I think we should correct our diplomacy so that in future we can avoid similar misadventure from Chinese side.
Okay, but how has the Chinese media reacted? We are being told that the Chinese media has underplayed this whole incident. Why do you think they have underplayed this incident if they have? And what are the intentions? What kind of statements are coming out from the government in Beijing?
Yes, Mr. Girish, here technology and social media has played a very important role. As you know, in China also they have a Twitter version, they call it Weibo. So on Weibo, it was very obvious to the Chinese audience here, or to media also, that Chinese have moved into the disputed area and they have put up their tent. So it was very clear, but all media is official media here, so they are not allowed to take any stand.
Right.
They only try to translate and interpret what is Indian media stand here. So I think I should congratulate Indian media for the first time that they have really, built up a pressure, more than what MEA has done or what anybody has done in India. And that was that they all Indian media that, Indian media branded China as an invader this time. And this was a very serious blame for Chinese who are trying to emerge as, peaceful power in Asia. And there's an attempt to show that China's rise will not be peaceful. So when Indian media depicted Chinese as taking, a misadventure in Indian border, I think they had to withdraw. And I really congratulate Indian media for building this pressure.
Okay, Binod, I think now we are joined in by Leela Ponappa. Leela Ponappa, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you, but I couldn't hear the previous speakers. There was a lot of resonance.
No, that's all right. But I want to ask you that the previous speakers have made several points why this withdrawal has taken place, and there's some Kapil Kak, the former Air Vice Marshal, is quite intrigued by this withdrawal. Now, my question to you is that why do you think the Chinese have withdrawn? You think that some kind of concessions have been made by India because of which they have withdrawn, or if there has been no concessions, this could be easily termed as a misadventure on the part of China?
Well, I wouldn't like to get into speculation since I really don't have information about whether any concessions have been made. I've seen media statements by the government that absolutely none were made, and unless we have evidence to the contrary, let us take it at face value.
Okay.
Now, getting to your question about why the Chinese had undertaken this set of steps.
Yes.
In terms of first being proactive and then withdrawing. Here again, there have been different theories that there are rogue elements within the PLA, that perhaps China was probing and so on. Based on what one has seen of Chinese behavior in East Asia, on the South China Sea issue, on the East China Sea issue, I think certainly there was an attempt to probe to see how far they could go. How much would India accept? How much would it be able to tolerate in terms of trying to maintain equilibrium? And I think firmness in this particular case was important and hopefully has achieved the desired result. But since we are told that there are still some details to be worked out, we will need to await the information about them before making an assessment.
Okay. Ajay, it's very interesting. Binod Singh sitting in Beijing, is very appreciative of the Indian media, the way the role played by the Indian media. But within India itself, there has been certain worries expressed about the way the Indian media, reacted to this incident. Ajay?
Yeah, Girish, there are two dimensions to this. On the negative side, it is absolutely correct that the Indian media tends to react in an over-the-top manner, in an aggressively nationalistic manner. But one of the reasons for that is that there's very little information in the public domain about the dynamics on the border, about the actual position, the negotiating positions in eastern Ladakh and so on. Nobody really knows. So the public opinion, of which media is actually a reflection, tends to believe that Indian interests are being bartered away by diplomats and so on the border, quite unjustifiably, I think, because the diplomats and the soldiers are doing a fine job. But on the plus side, the Indian media in this particular crisis has emerged as a real wild card. I mean, in the way that it has marshaled public opinion, in the way that it has sort of brought the country together in a way. China has, I think, been taken aback by all of this. It probably did not realize that 20 days into the crisis, you're going to find a united India, an India demanding stern action against China for this and demanding that no concessions be taken. So I think the media has, in a very perverse kind of a way, perhaps played a wild card role in all of this.
Yeah, I want to get quickly, before I go into a break, Leela Ponappa's comment on this. Leela Ponappa, the role of the media. This kind of, the kind of pressure which they put, you think that has helped in solving this matter now?
I would really recast your question in terms of how was communication on the issue handled. Now, starting with the media, I think they very rightly highlighted it as serious. But as Ajay just mentioned, sometimes there is a tendency to go overboard in terms of possibly getting shrill about it. Equally, I think in terms of the communication from the government, there was much that could have been done differently.
Absolutely.
We had 5 different voices saying 5 different things, and there was no consistency in terms of conveying that there was a serious situation. After all, if it required the army chief to brief the CCS, it meant there was a serious situation. It took the defense secretary to tell the standing committee of parliament that they were 19 kilometers in. So I think there is a need for the government to feed the media, to honestly share with the media and through it with the public the realities of the situation. And I think certainly the media did right by highlighting the seriousness of the issue. But I do believe that there is no room for shrillness in this, but certainly for serious discourse.
Okay. On that note, I think we need to go into a very short break now. We'll come back and continue this discussion. There are several other issues which needs to be discussed. Please keep watching back very soon. Welcome back. We are discussing the withdrawal of the Chinese forces from Ladakh and asking the question, is it a triumph of diplomacy? Dr. Kondapalli, do you think initially the way there have been many points made about the communication strategy of the government, but when you look at the result at the end of the day, in hindsight, you think that it was the right on the part of the government to underplay it initially and then use diplomacy to bring about this kind of thing and not play up to the jingoism or the kind of sentiments which were being expressed in the media?
I think we should see this from the point of view of whether the whole operation has been a successful operation or a failure.
Not, yes. And that will take some time to...
Absolutely, but there are some indicators that
Yes.
when the first flag meeting took place on the 18th April,
Right. This was 3 days after the incursion was
3 days
discovered.
after the incursion. There was the idea that Chinese have put 3 conditions. Number 1, deactivating Daulat Beg Oldi,
Right.
Fukche, Nyuma airfields. Number 2, infrastructure development projects should be rolled back. Number 3, in terms of the patrolling of the line of actual control. Now, if in a year's time, if we stop patrolling, Raksha Mantri told the parliament that we will actively participate in patrolling up to our perceived line of actual control. If we roll back this and we don't see any patrolling done, which I assume will be very difficult because this is a disputed area and there are suggestions that China had been encroaching some land where it's so. If we don't patrol, then I think there is a compromise arrived at. If we deactivate, if the Indian Air Force doesn't fly into the DBO, Fukche, Nyuma areas, then we could also presume that there has been some deal done.
Yes.
Or if we have information that the road construction activity or railway construction
The
activity
infrastructure
or
development.
infrastructure development. In 2009, we already have this information that Jammu and Kashmir government had stalled some of the projects under the Chinese pressure. So if these 3 are rolled back, I think then we can speculate that we had some setbacks.
We have given some concessions.
Yes.
Kapil Kak, you agree with that?
No,
Or do you think there are some other ways in which we can assess whether, what happened in this incident actually?
This is the point I made earlier too. I think there are apprehensions in the Chinese strategic and policy-making circles on defense that activation of the airfields at Daulat Beg Oldi, creation of an airfield at Nyoma, and of course reactivating Fukche could pose defense challenges to Aksai Chin area. Because I'm not talking about the Mountain Strike Corps, which is planned to be inducted in the eastern sector, but the capability of special operations, ground forces, and particularly air power in this sector. They feel a combination of power could be done to intersect that road which connects Tibetan areas to Xinjiang. You recall the 1957 road that was constructed there. That is the first thing. The second thing is the Chinese are conscious. For example, the fact that they have refused to exchange maps, which is a very reasonable request that the Indians have been making over 2 decades. They don't exchange maps. At least they can give us a perception. I mean, to say lightheartedly, they can say their territory exists till Delhi, but we can go ahead. But they're not doing it. So there is a deliberate plan there. Secondly, you see the understandings that were developed after 2003. Particularly the 2005 understanding on political parameters in ensuring that the line is drawn such that populated areas are not disturbed. They violated that line, and India hasn't contested. India hasn't read the Riot Act to them, put their feet to fire. Thirdly, you've seen the trade and other figures which I quoted earlier. The question of map making. For years, the Chinese have never questioned that the border boundary lies about 4,057 kilometers. But in the recent past, they are now looking at, they've just sliced off 2,500 odd kilometers of the boundary in Jammu and Kashmir, in fact, raising a fundamental question about India's sovereignty in Kashmir. Now, what I'm trying to hint at by these 3 or 4 points is that unless we are robust in our responses, diplomatic and military, to vis-a-vis China, I'm afraid these kind of things will continue.
Leela,
and we
Ponappa,
must, last of the points is that Xi Jinping has told Prime Minister we must resolve this boundary issue quickly. He said it at the summit.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is the time
Leela,
to...
Ponappa, quickly, you know, are these, what Kapil Kak says that, we have not been robust in our response, is that the way out to keep the relations on even keel?
Who is that addressed to?
You, Leela Ponappa.
Oh, okay. No, I entirely agree with Kapil that there is absolutely no room for complacency, that where a response is required, that it must be robust. And even otherwise, that our capabilities must be absolutely the optimal that our security forces require. Which is not to say that one needs to be jingoistic. I wish I could agree with Kapil's explanation about the Chinese concerns, but I think he's being charitable to them because Tibet is highly militarized. There are missiles located there that could easily target India. So I think the Chinese concerns about India activating a few infrastructural facilities in the Ladakh area are really totally misplaced. This was clearly an adventure, and I think in China the system is calibrated well enough to ensure that this is not the action of a local commander. You don't have this kind of a face-off over 3 weeks if the central command is not in favor of it.
Okay, Dr. Binod Singh, very quickly, you think that when the Chinese premier comes to India, this will be a topic of discussion? Do you think there will be any forward movement? Do you think that there will be any fresh, attempts to bring about some kind of an understanding on this issue? Do you think China will be interested in talking on this issue when the premier comes here? Very quickly.
Yes, I think China is having a long-term strategy to work with India, to work with South Asian countries and with West Asian countries. It is trying to redevelop that classical, Silk Road. China has to take India along with it, not only just Pakistan and other countries. China's involvement in Afghanistan and other parts of that region is getting, upgraded. And for that, I think it's not that China is just interested to solve this border issue with India, but it was, I think, long strategy, long plan for China to focus on that part of China, which is really not well developed, and to link China with the Western region and Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Binod, sorry, we are completely run out of time. Ajay, very quick, just one sentence to you. Do you think that, after this adventure or misadventure of China, India will, take things more seriously and not try to play down these kind of incidents? Very quickly.
Yes, that is my understanding from the Indian government. From what I understand, no concessions have been made. The government has actually achieved its aim in a way. China has backed off from this confrontation, and I think there's a growing awareness of the need to build infrastructure, to put our act together, and to make sure that we're ready to face any such incursions if they occur again.
Okay, thanks, Ajay. So we have to end this program here, but it's been a very interesting discussion. We have to wait and watch, but at this point of time, as Ajay says, and Leela Ponappa says, we have to take what the government of India says, that there has been no concessions, but it is quite good for the entire country that this whole 3-week standoff has ended. Let's hope that there won't be any more such standoffs in the future. Thanks to all my guests, Leela Ponappa, Ajai Shukla, Dr. Srikanth Kondapalli, Kapil Kak, and Dr. Binod Singh from Beijing. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time tomorrow.